Address to Congress on Women's Suffrage, Carrie, Chapman, Catt. Women's suffrage is inevitable. Suffragists knew it before November 4, 1917. Opponents afterward. Three distinct causes made it inevitable. First, the history of our country. Ours is a nation born of revolution, of rebellion against a system of government so securely entrenched in the customs and traditions of human society that in 1776 it seemed impregnable. From the beginning of things, nations had been ruled by kings and for kings, while the people served and paid the cost. The American revolutionists boldly proclaimed the heresies. Taxation without representation is tyranny. Governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. The colonists won, and the nation which was established as a result of their victory has held unfailingly that these two fundamental principles of democratic government are not only the spiritual source of our national existence, but have been our chief historic pride and at all times the sheet anchor of our liberties. 80 years after the Revolution, Abraham Lincoln welded these two maxims into a new one. Ours is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. 50 years more passed, and the President of the United States, Woodrow Wilson, in a mighty crisis of the nation, proclaimed to the world, "We are fighting for the things which we have always carried nearest to our hearts, for democracy, for the right of those who submit to authority to have a voice in their own government." All the way between these immortal aphorisms, political leaders have declared unabated faith in their truth. Not one American has arisen to question their logic in the 141 years of our national existence. However stupidly our country may have evaded the logical application at times, it has never swerved from its devotion to the theory of democracy as expressed by those two axioms. With such a history behind it, how can our nation escape the logic it has never failed to follow when its last unenfranchised class calls for the vote? Behold our Uncle Sam floating the banner with one hand. Taxation without representation is tyranny, and with the other seizing the billions of dollars paid in taxes by women to whom he refuses representation. Behold him again welcoming the boys of 21 and the newly made immigrant citizen to a voice in their own government, while he denies that fundamental right of democracy to thousands of women public school teachers from whom many of these men learn all they know of citizenship and patriotism, to women college presidents, to women who preach in our pulpits, interpret law in our courts, preside over our hospitals, write books and magazines, and serve in every uplifting moral and social enterprise. It is there a single man who can justify such inequality of treatment, such outrageous discrimination? Not one. Second, the suffrage for women already established in the United States makes women's suffrage for the nation inevitable. When E. Root, as president of the American Society of International Law at the 11th annual meeting in Washington, April 26, 1917, said, "The world cannot be half democratic and half ocratic. It must be all democratic or all Prussian. There can be no compromise." He voiced a general truth. Precisely the same intuition has already taught the blindest and most hostile foe of women's suffrage that our nation cannot long continue a condition under which government in half its territory rests upon the consent of half of the people, in the other half upon the consent of all the people. A condition which grants representation to the taxed in half of its territory and denies it in the other half. A condition which permits women in some states to share in the election of the president, senators, and representatives and denies them that privilege in others. It is too obvious to require demonstration that women's suffrage, now covering half our territory, will eventually be ordained in all the nation. No one will deny it. The only question left is when and how it will be completely established. Third, the leadership of the United States in world democracy compels the enfranchisement of its own women. The maxims of the Declaration were once called fundamental principles of government. They are now called American principles or even Americanisms. They have become the slogans of every movement toward political liberty the world around, of every effort to widen the suffrage for men or women in any land. Not a people, race, or class striving for freedom is there anywhere in the world that has not made our axioms the chief weapon of the struggle. More, all men and women the world around, with far-sighted vision into the verities of things, known that the world tragedy of our day is not being waged over the assassination of an archduke, nor commercial competition, nor national ambitions, nor the freedom of the seas. It is a death grapple between the forces which deny and those which uphold the truths of the Declaration of Independence. Do you realize that in no other country in the world with democratic tendencies is suffrage so completely denied as in a considerable number of our own states? There are 13 black states where no suffrage for women exists and 14 others where suffrage for women is more limited than in many foreign countries. Do you realize that when you ask women to take their cause to state referendum, you compel them to do this? That you drive women of education, refinement, achievement to beg men who cannot read for their political freedom? Do you realize that such anomalies as a college president asking her janitor to give her a vote are overstraining the patience and driving women to desperation? Do you realize that women in increasing numbers indignantly resent the long delay in their enfranchisement? Your party platforms have pledged women's suffrage. Then why not be honest, frank friends of our cause? Adopt it in reality as your own. Make it a party program and fight with us. As a party measure, a measure of all parties, why not put the amendment through Congress and the legislatures? We shall all be better friends. We shall have a happier nation. We women will be free to support loyally the party of our choice and shall be far prouder of our history. There is one thing mightier than the kings and armies, aye, than congresses and political parties, the power of an idea when its time has come to move. The time for women's suffrage has come. The women's hour has struck. If parties prefer to postpone action longer and thus do battle with this idea, they challenge the inevitable. The idea will not perish. The party which opposes it may. Every delay, every trick, every political dishonesty from now on will antagonize the women of the land more and more, and when the party or parties which have so delayed women's suffrage finally let it come, their sincerity will be doubted and their appeal to the new voters will be met with suspicion. This is the psychology of the situation. Can you afford the risk? Think it over. We know you will meet opposition. There are a few women haters left, a few old males of the tribe, as Vance Thompson calls them, whose duty they believe it to be to keep women in the places they have carefully picked out for them. Trotsky, made world famous by war literature, said some years ago, Germany, which knows all about Germany and France, knows far better what is good for Alsace-Lorraine than that miserable people can possibly know. A few American Trotskyists we have who know better than women what is good for them. There are women, too, with slave souls and clinging vines for backbones. There are female dolls and male dandies. But the world does not wait for such as these, nor does liberty pause to heed the plaint of men and women with such a grouch. She does not wait for those who have a special interest to serve, nor a selfish reason for depriving other people of freedom. Holding her torch aloft, liberty is pointing the way onward and upward and saying to America, come. To you and the supporters of our cause in Senate and House, and the number is large, the suffragists of the nation express their grateful thanks. This address is not meant for you. We are more truly appreciative of all you have done than any words can express. We ask you to make a last hard fight for the amendment during the present session. Since last we asked to vote on the amendment, your position has been fortified by the addition to suffrage territory of Great Britain, Canada, and New York. Some of you have been too indifferent to give more than casual attention to this question. It is worthy of your immediate consideration. A question big enough to engage the attention of our allies in wartime is too big a question for you to neglect. Some of you have grown old in party service. Are you willing that those who take your places by and by shall blame you for having failed to keep pace with the world and thus having lost for them a party advantage? Is there any real gain for you, for your party, for your nation by delay? Do you want to drive the progressive men and women out of your party? Some of you hold to the doctrine of states' rights as applying to women's suffrage. Adherence to that theory will keep the United States far behind all other democratic nations upon this question. A theory which prevents a nation from keeping up with the trend of world progress cannot be justified. Gentlemen, we hereby petition you, our only designated representatives, to redress our grievances by the immediate passage of the federal suffrage amendment and to use your influence to secure its ratification in your own state, in order that the women of our nation may be endowed with political freedom before the next presidential election and that our nation may resume its world leadership in democracy. Women's suffrage is coming. You know it. Will you, honorable senators and members of the House of Representatives, help or hinder it?